Hey everyone, it's Glenn Rawson, and as promised, here we are. I hope you're having a great Sabbath and that being shut in isn't taking too big of a toll on you. In an effort maybe to bring something to your Sabbath, as you know, we've been involved with church history for quite a while now, and there are some things about church history that are coming up this week. A couple of very significant anniversaries are going to happen this week. I'm not sure that you're really all that concerned about what they are, but I don't think these events should be forgotten. So if you don't mind, let me share something with you. It was sometime in the wee hours of the morning of March 25th, 1832, when an infuriated mob exploded through the door of the summer kitchen of the John Johnson home in Hiram, Ohio. They grabbed 26-year-old Joseph Smith Jr. Before he could even fully come awake, they were dragging him out the door of the kitchen. Now, as he passed through the doorway and came awake, he freed one leg and kicked one of the mobbers right in the face. It knocked him tail over tea kettle right out the door and out onto the grass. The man immediately sprang to his feet, leaped forward, his face all covered with blood, and fell on the prophet Joseph Smith and began to scratch him, crying out, "That's the way the Holy Ghost falls on folks." The guy was completely out of his mind. Well, as they dragged Joseph out, not letting him get his feet on the ground, as they took him down across the meadow, he looked out there and he saw his friend and counselor, Sidney Rigdon, stretched out on the ground and unconscious. Again, March 25th is coming up. And as he saw Sidney, Joseph asked the mob if they would show mercy, and they said, "We will show you no mercy. Call on your God for help." Can you imagine? Men seemed to come from everywhere, and for a time the mob held a council. What were they going to do with him? Would they kill him? Would they emasculate him? Would they just rough him up? We don't know the deliberations, but somewhere they made the decision they wouldn't kill him. They would just hurt him. And so to do that, they beat him, they kicked him, they scratched him. At one point, they had beaten him so badly that they killed him. Joseph describes in his record standing above his body and looking down at it. Somewhere in all of that, while he was still conscious, they tried to force a vial of aquafortis, which is nitric acid, down his throat. This acid was designed to be so caustic that if he took it in, it would burn his vocal cords and destroy his voice. Probably would have killed him, but at least it would have made it unable for him to speak ever again. And then someone sounded the word that someone was coming, and the mob scattered and left Joseph on the ground, on the cold, frozen ground. When he came to, he looked off in the distance and he could see the lights of the John Johnson home. And everything around the home was a melee. I'm not telling the whole of the story. Suffice it to say, Joseph struggled to his feet and made his way back to the home. They brought him inside, stood him before the fireplace. Now, I forgot to mention the main point. They had poured tar and covered him with tar and feathers. As he came into the house, he stood by the fire, and they scraped off the tar, sometimes taking with it layers of skin as they did so. Can you imagine the pain and the difficulty that he went through that night? But the following morning was the Sabbath. And in that Sabbath day, Joseph had an appointment to preach. He stood up, he preached, and at the end of his sermon, baptized several people into the church. Now, why the mob? Why were they there in the first place? Well, as I said recently, light always stirs up darkness. It makes people angry. And what light had been revealed that caused such an outburst of hate and anger? It was a new revelation, barely revealed just a few days before. One of the greatest revelations of our time. What was it? It was called the Vision, section 76 of the Doctrine and Covenants. If there's one thing we can expect in this life, it's adversity, opposition, plagues, difficulties, viruses, you name it. Opposition always comes and the work always takes a hit. But if you stand on the Lord's side, the Lord will always win. That's the first story. And again, that event is coming up in 3 days on March 25th, the anniversary of Joseph's tarring and feathering. Now, I'd like to share another story with you, if I could. Hang on just a second while I switch the technology over here. Okay, here's the other story. Remember that phrase from Isaiah, where Isaiah talks about a marvelous work and a wonder that will come in the last days? Well, okay, I'll bite. A marvelous work and a wonder. Some kind of thing that's going to happen in the last days that will cause men to marvel, to exclaim, to stand with amazement. A marvelous work and a wonder. Something that defies the understanding of men. Isaiah speaks at length of this great marvelous work and a wonder that would come in the last days. What is it? What is this marvelous work and a wonder that, as Isaiah said, will cause the blind to see, the deaf to hear, that will change the whole world and make it into a new place, will cause the barren trees of Lebanon to grow again, and the wilderness to blossom as a rose, and men's hearts to change? What is this singular, marvelous work and a wonder? Well, let me quote something to you. When ye shall see these sayings coming forth among you, ye need not any longer spurn at the doings of the Lord. For the sword of his justice is in his right hand, and behold, at that day, if ye shall spurn at his doings, he will cause that it shall soon overtake you. The last thing you and I want to do is make light of this marvelous work and a wonder, whatever it is. We want to embrace it, accept it with all of our hearts, because if we don't, it will stand against us. What is it? Well, the anniversary is coming up in 4 days. March 26th is the date of the beginning of the marvelous work and a wonder. The exact date was March 26th, 1830, in Palmyra, New York. That's the day, from out of the Grandin Press and Grandin Row there in Palmyra, New York, that's the date that the Book of Mormon first went on sale. The Book of Mormon, the marvelous work and a wonder. A marvelous work and a wonder, and a witness and a warning. I hope you have a wonderful Sabbath. I hope the Spirit of the Lord is in your home. And on the 25th and 26th, I hope you remember those two significant dates. In the meantime, we'll see you again on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, where we'll come back with more church history, possible anniversaries, current research of the books that we're working on. If there's one thing, and don't forget this, for those of you that are living in and around Utah, on Conference Sunday morning at 9 o'clock, History of the Saints will broadcast we'll broadcast a session at 9 o'clock, just before General Conference, we will have a special that will enable us to talk more about connecting with our pioneer ancestors. We'll be putting out the word, look for it, 9 o'clock Sunday morning on KSL. Thanks, guys. Have a great Sabbath, and we'll see you Tuesday.